Hello, everybody. You're on the mic. And on today's episode, we're going to go back to continuing looking at some classic animation studios. In this case, we're not going to look at a studio per se, but a pair of animators who were instrumental in helping to found and establish a pair of studios. So I'm going to be talking about animators Hugh Harman and Rudolph Ising, who were two American animators who were very active from during the golden age of film, um, from the 1930s to the 1950s, having worked with, of course, Disney, as well as helping to establish Warner Brothers Cartoon Studios, as well as MGM Cartoon Studios. So without any further ado, let's get going here. Okay, so as we get started here, make sure the camera is on. Okay, good. So as we get started here, so Hugh Harman and Rudolph Ising were were an American animation team known for founding the Warner Brothers and Metro Goldwyn Mayer or MGM animation studios, as I mentioned. So here's some of their early history. Harman and Ising first worked in animation in the early 1920s at Walt Disney's studio in Kansas City. When Disney moved operations to California, Harman, Ising, and fellow animator Carmen Maxwell stayed behind to try to start their own studio. And there were a number of times they would try to start their own studio, but just would never be able to. Their plans went nowhere, however, and the men soon rejoined Disney to work on his Alice comedies and Oswald the Lucky Rabbit films. I've already kind of covered Oswald the Lucky Rabbit as part of the Walter Lantz profile. It was during this time that Harman and Ising developed a style of cartoon drawing that would later be closely associated and credited to Disney. When producer Charles Mintz ended his association with Disney, Harman and Ising went to work for Mintz, whose brother-in-law George Winkler set up a new animation studio to make the Oswald cartoons. The Oswald cartoons, which Harman and Ising produced in 1928 and 1929, already show their distinctive style, which would later characterize their work on Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies cartoon series for the Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies cartoon series for Warner Brothers. For example, in Six Cylinders, 1929, there are sequences which were later remade very closely to in such Harman and Ising Warner Brothers efforts as Sinking in the Bathtub, 1930, and Bosco's Holiday, 1931. The Oswald cartoons that Harman and Ising worked on are completely different from the Oswald cartoons made before and after Disney and can be distinguished by anyone familiar with their work. Late in 1929, Universal Pictures, who owned the rights to Oswald, started its own animation studio headed up by Walter Lantz, replacing Mintz and forcing Harman and Ising out of work. Yes, and I've already talked about this. That was what led to Walter Lantz, what gave us Walter Lantz Productions. I've already done a profile on that if you guys want to check that out. You can just check my videos, find it. It's one of the previous episodes here. So moving on then. Warner Brothers and Van Buren. Harman and Ising had long aspired to start their own studio and had created and copyrighted the cartoon character Bosco in 1928. After losing their jobs at the Winkler Studio, Harman and Ising financed a short Bosco demonstration film called Bosco the Talk Ink Kid. The cartoon featured Bosco at odds with his animators, portrayed in live action by Rudy Ising. Now, this of course was a common technique of some of the older cartoons where you did, and I know many of the studios did this, where you'd have a few shorts there where you'd actually have the cartoon character and basically interacting with the live action with maybe one of their creators. Um, Okay, so the cartoon featured Bosco at odds with his animator portrayed in live action by Rudy Ising. Impressed Leon Schlesinger, who paired Harman and Ising with Warner Brothers. So Schlesinger wanted the Bosco character to star in a new series of cartoons he dubbed Looney Tunes, the title being a parody of Walt Disney's Silly Symphonies. So you had Looney Tunes for Warner Brothers, and you had Silly Symphonies for Disney. So you go. There's where you get the Looney Tunes and the Harman-Ising connection to Warner Brothers. The pair made Sinking in the Bathtub in 1930, and the cartoon did well. Harman took over direction of the Looney Tunes, starring the character, while Ising took a sister series called Merry Melodies that consisted of one-shot stories and characters. I believe these were probably prior to the development of characters such as like Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck and all that. Those I think came later. These were some of the earlier Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies works that they're talking about that Harman and Ising had worked on. The the two animators broke off ties with Schlesinger later in 1933 over budget disputes with the producer, who vetoed their demands for bigger budgets and went to Van Buren's studio, which was making cartoons for RKO Radio Productions. I think that seems to be a classic problem. That always seems to be a classic problem between artists and producers. Artists who are more creative focused, who like want to use as much money as possible to get the best product out there, versus the producers who are more business minded, who are trying to keep everything within cost and within affordability, to make a decent profit while handling all the costs, like paying everybody involved and all that. So there they were offered a contract to produce the Chubby Bear cartoon series. Harman and Ising produced two released cartoons for this series, but were in the midst of making a third cartoon when a contractual dispute arose. The pair left Van Buren, but kept the completed cartoon and finally released it in the 1940s. Metro Goldwyn Mayer. Harman and Ising had maintained the rights to the Bosco character, and they signed a deal with Metro Goldwyn Mayer to start a new series of Bosco shorts in 1934. The two maintained the same division of work they had used at Warner Brothers. Harman worked on the Bosco shorts, and Ising directed one-shots. They also tried unsuccessfully to create new cartoon stars for their new distributors. Their cartoons, though technically superior to those they had made for Schlesinger at Warner's, were still music-driven shorts with little to no plot. When the new Happy Harmony series ran significantly over budget in 1937, yeah, I think I do remember seeing a few of the shorts from Happy Harmonies or that title. Again, Happy Harmonies, another idea of like silly symphonies or Looney Tunes or Merry Melodies. A little alliteration there. MGM fired Harman and Ising and established its own in-house studio, the Metro Goldwyn Cartoon Studio, which was headed by Fred Quimby, which of course gave us like Tom and Jerry, Droopy, and all that. Harman and Ising still found work at the time as animation freelancers. Basically it made sense for a lot of companies. They could still get their quality of work without having to deal with them long term and deal with them possibly running, for one or two projects here and there. If they have a higher budget, that's fine. They don't have to worry about the higher budgets, over a longer period of time. Harman and Ising lent their former ink and painters to Walt Disney while Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was behind schedule. Disney afterward commissioned Harman and Ising to produce a silly symphony cartoon, Merbabies. In return, commissioned Harman in return for the work they did on Snow White. Disney reneged on a deal he had made for two other Harman Ising cartoons to be produced for the studio. Harman and Ising sold the cartoons to MGM, and Quimby later agreed to hire the animators back to the studio. Ising created the character Barney Bear for MGM at this time, basing the sleepy-eyed character partially on himself. Barney Bear, again, another one of those characters that was synonymous with MGM. In 1939, Harman created his masterpiece, Peace on Earth, a downbeat morality tale about two squirrels discovering the evils of humanity, which was nominated for an Oscar. The following year, Ising produced William Hanna and Joseph Barbera's first cartoon, Puss Gets the Boot, a cartoon featuring characters later known as Tom and Jerry. So Harman and Ising actually had a hand in helping to create two of MGM's stalwart, or technically I guess three of MGM's most notable characters, Barney Bear and then Tom and Jerry. Despite the popularity of Puss Gets the Boot, of course this was also at a time when MGM, when Hanna and Barbera were still working for MGM, a few years before they would establish Hanna-Barbera Productions. So, despite the popularity of Puss Gets the Boot, Ising's The Milky Way was more successful and became the first non-Disney film to win the Academy Award trophy. Despite the success of these and other cartoons, MGM's production under Harman and Ising remained low. In 1941, Harman left MGM and formed a new studio with Disney veteran Mel Shaw. The two took over Ub Iwerk's old studio in Beverly Hills, California, where they created training films for the Army. In 1942, Ising also quit MGM in his case to join the military. Later career and legacy. By 1951, Harman and Ising were back together and making industrial and commercial films such as the 1951 film Good Wrinkles, made for the California prune industry. In 1960, Harman Ising produced a pilot episode for a made for TV cartoon series titled The Adventures of Sir Gee Whiz on the Other Side of the Moon. Now, back in those days, Gee Whiz was kind of a popular saying. It's like, it's like, let's see, how would it, oh, gee whiz. What would be a comparison to today's ideology? Um, ideology. Yeah, I think ideology would be the correct. So gee whiz. So gee whiz. Oh, what I guess. Oh, whatever would be somewhat of a modern comparison to it. The unsold pilot for the never produced series was profiled on episode 6 of Cartoon Dump. Cartoon Dump was apparently an online series that only ran 6 episodes a few years ago. Rudy Ising was the voice of Gee Whiz. So Rudy Ising played a couple of voices, Gee Whiz, and portrayed himself in one of his cartoons as well. Although Harman and Ising contributed to much of what would later be known as the Disney style, they have been dismissed as mere copycats. In reality, Harman and Ising never attempted to imitate Disney. They were attempting to make refined, polished cartoons whose quality would shine in comparison to the work of others. Their repeated attempts to make quality cartoons and the refusal to be bound by budgets led to numerous disputes with their producers, as I mentioned earlier. Because of this, they were unable to create any enduring characters. Instead, they created studios that would later produce such characters. Oh, granted, yeah, they their character. I mean, I think their most famous characters they were involved with Oswald the Lucky Rat. Bosco is probably the only one that they really was their character, but they had some significant hand in Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, Barney Bear, and Tom and Jerry. Of course, Tom and Jerry, the iconoclastic characters from MGM. So, um, but because of their work, they helped to establish, their influence was felt by a number of the classic studios. Um, Ising and Harman were portrayed in the feature film Walt Before Mickey by David Henry and Hunter Gomez. So yeah, as was said, Harman and Ising were they were animators who basically lent their work to others. Lent their work to others, and so as I said, Harman and Ising were contributed to the establishment of some of the classic studios that we've seen over the years. So with all that being said, now moving on to this day in niche history, because today being May 26, 2020, it'd be nice to see um, what happened on this date in some of the areas of anime, manga, comics, cartoons for wrestling. So, with that being said, let's get started here. A couple of big things happened in the world of professional wrestling on this date in 1990. First off, the Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling, kind of a wrestling all-female promotion run by that was originally started up by Jackie Stallone, the mother of Sylvester Stallone. Um, they aired their final episode on this date in 1990 with Daisy defeating Glow champion Cheyenne Cher to win the title in the main event of that card. Also on this date in 1990, as I can find that part here, Scott Norton was stripped of the NWA Pacific Northwest title when he is suspended from Pacific Northwest Wrestling for attacking several wrestlers during a brawl. So those two things happened on this date in 1990. Glow would air its final episode on this date, as well as Scott Norton being stripped of the Pacific Northwest heavyweight title. Also, on this date in 1999, under its Wildstorm imprint, DC Comics would release on the newsstands Danger Girl #5, which is a continuation of the series from Image Comics. One of the interesting things I saw on this as well is it has a couple of variant covers. It's reprinted in a couple. It had like 3 different variant covers, and 2 of those variant covers had some pretty interesting cover art on it. What some people might consider maybe a little bit of fan service. So but yes, on this date in 1999, Danger Girl #5 was released on the newsstand by DC Comics from their Wildstorm imprint. Those are things that happened on this date in 1995. And with that being said, if you guys want to contact me directly, my Discord is in the link section below. You can check out, my Discord. You can join if you'd like. I'm also still promoting a bunch of different dub companies. Good time. Hopefully you guys have had a chance to check out some other works out there. Hopefully all this mess will at least calm down soon, and hopefully, we'll get back to some semblance of normal soon. It still may be a while though, but hopefully keep your chin up and check out some of the other works that are out there. Also, I'm still promoting the GoFundMe's. Vic's GoFundMe, as I'm still promoting Vic's GoFundMe, as well as I just recently started promoting Tug and Lug's latest comic, Another Case of the Littlest Umbrella. You guys might want to check that out. As always, guys, never feel like you have to donate. If it's on your heart to do so, and you have the means to, please consider donating. If you can, if you've already donated, please consider donating again. And if you cannot donate, you can still help out the cause by sharing the link. Because sharing is caring. You never know. Maybe somebody in your circle of friends will somebody in your circle of friends will see it and say, yeah, I want to help out too. It's especially important to consider it right now, especially with everything having been on lockdown. People have been out of work for a while. Don't feel like you have to donate if you don't have the means to. Don't feel pressured. I'm sure that those involved, while they appreciate your donations, they don't want to see you go bankrupt over it. So just keep that in mind. And if you like this content, please consider liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing. I always look forward to the conversation with you guys as long as it's civil and respectful. A lot of this stuff, like what I'm doing here with the animation classic cartoon studios, a lot of this just more FYI stuff that I hope, what I hope is you guys will learn something from it. Maybe it'll spark some interest, and maybe you guys will check out some of this stuff. Or check out some of this stuff, because it's pretty cool stuff, especially for those of us who are a little bit older and grew up on some of this stuff. You know, maybe through syndication or whatever. When you look back and you watch, some of these Looney Tune older Looney Tune cartoons, or older some of these older stuff like Looney Tunes, Merry Melodies, MGM cartoons, Hanna Barbera, what have you. It's nice to know a little bit about the history about these companies, and even learn a little bit about maybe some of the culture impact they had as well. So I hope you guys find this stuff informative and entertaining. And with that, also don't forget that this Friday will be the next Voices Big and Small. I will be on that episode. I'll be debuting the episode. I'll be profiling Chris Kaysen. So I hope you guys will come in and check it out and have a good conversation about Chris Kaysen and his career as a voice actor, as a dub voice actor. And I'll have another animation studio profile tomorrow. So until tomorrow, guys, bye.